Hello imaginative people and welcome to Brainstorms. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dreampunk and deeply weird fantasy author, and yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Let me be your inspiration mystic, here to take your imagination to a whole new world of story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. So send me some words through my play page at annatizard.com and hear what happens when they're pulled out of the socks of destiny. Let the games begin. Greetings from a very soggy UK. It is episode 17 and I am very excited to begin a new format for the show. It might seem at first as if you're losing something because in episodes 1 to 16 there was a lot of material before the gameplay about inspiration, the surrealists who invented Exquisite Corpse, and things like psychology of writing. But now that I'm going to focus more on gameplay, the lack of background research and preparation I have to do for the show simplifies things for me and opens up my time and my imagination to be able to share with you more personal stuff and more of my writing. If you found some nuggets of wisdom in my earlier shows, then great, but those nuggets will still be there in the background, nuggeting away, and perhaps they'll reveal themselves in new ways, of their own accord maybe, now that I've freed up more time and brain space just to be creative and write. In fact, I already have a little bit of writing to share with you, inspired by one of the Exquisite Corpses that came up in the last show, so it's already happening. I've only just changed the format and I'm already writing more and able to share with you more of my raw creativity, shall we say. But first, a quick personal update. What have I been up to? Well, there was something bizarre that happens during all these storms we've been having in the UK. You might already know that I've been struggling with long COVID for a long time now, on a phased return to work, and I've been attempting to get into the office for my day job about once a week to spare myself from the four walls of the apocalypse, as we call them here. You don't need the four horses of the apocalypse when you have the four walls of the apocalypse of just constantly working from home. And I like it up to a point. It does start to make you feel quite claustrophobic, and I do miss seeing people and getting out and about. So I was all geared up to go in on Tuesday because there was a big meeting in the morning. And of course it was earlier than I'm meant to start work every day with my phased return, but whatever. I forced myself up, gathered myself towards myself, after having barely slept, by the way, because of the noisy storm that raged pretty much all night. So I'm just going up to the station and I can see across the road already that there's like one person on the platform, and these early trains are usually rammed. So I was thinking, okay, maybe with all this wind there's been an issue with the trains. Oh well. So I went up to have a look anyway, and all of the trains were cancelled, not just one or two, all of them. There's a notice about some sort of obstruction on the rails. It doesn't say what it is. It's usually leaves on the track or something equally ridiculous. So I cursed a few times, turned around, went back home, this time walking into the wind. By the time I got home, I was knackered and quite pleased really that I couldn't get in and potentially knacker myself a whole lot more with travel and everything. And there's more walking to do when I get in. So I log into the meeting remotely and I overhear our director saying that quite a lot of people couldn't make it in today because there's a trampoline on the tracks. A trampoline. flying through the night sky, bouncing over rooftops, witnessed only by foxes and sarcastic cats on street corners who, frankly, they're sarcastic enough already. You don't need more sarcasm from cats. And maybe a few drunk people who didn't quite believe what they were seeing. It was a very weird mental image. Then later that day, I nipped onto social media, as you do in your lunch hour, and saw that a prominent broadsheet newspaper had posted a video of giant balls flying through the streets of London that same night. It was a thing to behold. It was two things, actually, funnily enough. They were as tall as double-decker buses, if not taller, just kind of swooping through Tottenham Court Road and bouncing against lampposts and cars. They were giant baubles, Christmas decorations that had come loose from some tall building. I had to watch it a few times. It was so weird. One of them scraped a lamppost as it turned a corner and shed its silver skin. Surrealism has entered our midst, whether we like it or not. Anyway, speaking of surrealism, I mentioned that after episode 16 I had a go at writing a scene based on one of the Exquisite Corpses that came up. Now what I'm going to share with you is just a glimpse, and I do call them glimpses in fact, when it's really just a short piece, just a few paragraphs of experimentation with an idea. If you've listened to the show before, you'll know that I like to let stories rest after an initial splurge of writing. I write as much as I can until the feeling of playfulness just can't be stirred up anymore for that particular idea. And I do push pretty hard for that. I'm a bit of a disciplinarian. But you do have to listen to an idea and allow for when you might not be able to get any more out of it for the time being. It might be weeks or even months that I spend more or less exclusively on an idea. But sometimes I just spend a few minutes on something and that's it, because I'm really not sure what's going to come out of it, if anything. A glimpse is just a quick burst, an initial impression that may or may not develop into something, probably at a later date, after a rest. And then I just move on to something else, whatever story I'm working on at the time. The Exquisite Corpse from last week is the avuncular sewing machine gave their life for and love to the ravenous melody. And yes, I did have to look up avuncular if there's anyone else who's a bit foggy on the meaning, because it is quite an unusual word. It doesn't come up that often. It means sort of supportive or encouraging to someone who's younger or less experienced than you. So just read that out again, because it is weird. The avuncular sewing machine gave their life for and love to the ravenous melody. And this is my little glimpse. The melody cut her through and through. Her cello wept its notes inside her long after she'd put it aside and tucked away her bow. Since then, she'd made a cup of coffee, hoping to drown out the tune's memory with the rumble of her kettle. She sat down at the high-polished table to wait for the doorbell. Would he even turn up? Did he even have the grace to end things properly, honestly, with her? The clock's second hand went round and round, chipping time into meaningless pieces. She closed her eyes and thought of the metronome, a solid, rounded rhythm that clocked the seconds, or almost seconds, giving weight and an orderliness to her arpeggios and the slow movements of Bach. Her practice, her life on a string, 4 strings to ring out the feelings that wouldn't die. The sounds and the ache, no longer measuring beats, but the hunger inside her. He wouldn't make a scene, not in her antiques shop. There wasn't the space between the 18th century grandfather clock the pre-war dining chairs and the figurines she picked up at a car boot sale for a steal. If he scratched a thing, she would sue him. Anger rose, crashing its wave inside her. The song languished, then stirred again. She bent her head against the torment, letting her tears catch on her sleeve so they didn't smear the table, which she'd only just polished. Blearily, she noticed the threads of her sleeve had come undone at the cuff. Hardly surprising. She took better care of her shop and antiques than she did of herself. The clock's ticking speeded up, making her stop in the middle of a sigh. No, it wasn't the clock, she thought, holding her breath to listen. The sewing machine. Now, I wasn't sure where to go next with that, but I wrote something separate about the sewing machine. I just dived into that separately. Along came the sewing machine with its neat, tight rhythm, beats so close they made a hum. A pattern as smoothly rendered as the stitches along a hem. Under her careful hands, it gave out a little stream of neatness, as if order itself could unravel. It was time to mend her sleeve and her heart. I suppose it's interesting how the idea of rhythm has cropped up, based on the idea of the sewing machine, I suppose, and also the fact we're dealing with a melody on the other hand. I'd like to develop the idea of chaos inside this person as she faces the orderly little sewing machine. So like order versus chaos. But I always think the next step after initial glimpse is brainstorming ideas about the characters and their overall situation. It becomes a lot more personal after that first sort of snapshot of an idea. And that's when a whole host of other details sort of rise up and make themselves known. And it gets a whole lot more complicated. But yeah, I think I will let it rest. I'll let it rest for now. But in the meantime, I think it's time to find some more exquisite corpses. Let's bring forth the socks of destiny. Now, for those who haven't played before or listened to Brainstorm, an exquisite corpse forms a sentence from randomised words in this order: describing word noun, action, describing word noun. This is why I have 3 socks of destiny for these 3 types of words and phrases, which lovely people like yourself have sent to me through my play page at annatizard.com, which, you know, anyone can do at any time. So please join in, because the socks of destiny are starting to get a little bit low. But let's just see what they bring us today. First word is from Paul Thomas, and it is petrified. Right, who or what was petrified? Our first noun is from, is this Mariah? Yes, that's Mariah. Horse. A petrified horse. Is it actually frozen solid? Or is it just frightened? So frightened that it's become stricken. Let's see what this petrified horse got up to. This is from Fraser Armitage. Sold their name to. That's really weird. Okay, right. Let's see. This is going to be something super weird now, isn't it? It's going to be ridiculous. Okay, so this is from the Poet's Goblin on Twitter. All consuming. Right. Well, I think this final noun's just going to tell us what's going on now. Let's see. This is from Twitter ID Tess_2020. Oh God, I can't even pronounce this. axolotl. Axolotl. I've written a note because I didn't know what it was. I had to look it up. Mexican salamander that retains its larval form throughout life, yet is still able to breed. Oh wow. Okay, so we've got our work cut out for us, haven't we? I think I'm gonna have to pour some tea. So it's been brewing for a little while. Give that a bit of a stir. Let's just see if this helps at all. Right. Okay, let's just read this again. So I've pressed pause and jotted this down, as I always feel the need to. Feel free to make use of the pause button as well. I'm not the only one with a pause button here. If you'd like to join in with the story brainstorming, it can help. So the petrified horse sold their name to the all-consuming. Still struggling to pronounce it. Axolotl. Apologies to salamanders everywhere for not being able to pronounce these. Oh dear. Okay. The first thing that is popping into my head is, for some reason, weird pop stars. Because you do get a lot of weirdness in pop stars, and just the sort of the videos, the music videos that they have to make, and the covers and all of that. Modern music that seems to be at least as much about visual art as it is about music, people who kind of make it the big time. And so, I mean, you have to think outside the box on these things, because we have two animals here. Unless we're going to talk about actual talking animals, which sometimes we might. It's a lot to sort of try and make sense of in a story. Okay, so this is something to do with pop stars. I just feel this. Just go with me on this. An all-consuming axolotl. Okay, so the meaning of this, when I read out that little bit I jotted down, that's quite interesting, because it's a salamander that retains its larval form throughout life, yet is still able to breed. This is something to do with youth, the obsession with youth. And is that not an all-consuming desire for some pop stars, some aging pop stars, and they need to stay young all the time? Something to do with that. It becomes all-consuming. The notion that you can not retain your larval form necessarily, but yeah, it's kind of like that when people try to just keep having, I don't know, more injections into their faces, and just trying to stay young looking no matter what the price or how bizarre they end up looking. Because some people do start to look a bit strange, don't they? Petrified horse. I've got a vision either of someone who's actually dressed up as a horse, because why not? Or just someone, I don't know, with slightly horsey features. But sold their name to. Is it something to do with trademarks? Okay, so the person with the all-consuming axolotl. Hey, I learnt to pronounce it. 5th time lucky or whatever. The person who's involved with that, they're developing a face cream or something. They're doing they're creating an anti-aging range, because they're an aging pop star, but they've managed to look good still, and they reckon they've got the secret to youth, even if it is all-consuming. But they want to use a trademarked name used by the petrified horse. Petrified. That means frozen and stuck in a shape. So that that is a way of, I mean, just like metaphorically speaking, hypothetically speaking, that does make sense for someone who's halting youth. Oh, that's quite weird now that I've seen that connection. Okay. So the petrified horse, whether it's, and oh, it's not going to be an actual horse, that's just ridiculous. But whoever we think of as the petrified horse, they have frozen time somehow within their bodies or in their faces. And now this other pop star, it's just a fight between these pop stars now, isn't it? So, the petrified horse has the upper hand, it turns out, when it comes to anti-aging. And so this person who's developing the face creams, etc. Oh my goodness, it's just completely bonkers. Wants something of theirs, which, I mean, sold their name to, it's got to be something to do with trademarks. Oh God. Okay, that was a really, really difficult one. There's got to be something easier in these Socks of Destiny. I mean, come on. Got to be something easier than that. I mean, it's not really my area, you know, aging pop stars. They're out there. They get on with their own thing. That's fine. I get on with mine. Our paths do not cross. Okay, so the new describing word is from Alessandro Pozzo. Ubiquitous. Okay. I feel like we've had that name before, that word before. I don't know. Let's see. The noun is from Fraser Armitage. Starship captain. Right. Well, I mean, you'll get about if you're a starship captain. This one gets about a lot if he or she is ubiquitous. Let's bring an action into this. If I can just disentangle these pieces of paper. This is from Mariah. Was frightened of. Who or what was he frightened of? This is from Tom. Sultry. So that can mean provocative or sort of humid, I suppose. I suppose space is very cold, so if this starship captain is used to the cold, he might well be frightened of somewhere that's really hot. This is from Weird Micro, which is a Twitter ID that churns out writing prompts. Anguish. Oh God. What a time. Do you know what? There is something about these abstract nouns. I mean, you gotta love them and hate them, because they can make things really difficult. They also make things really interesting and different. Okay. So we have the ubiquitous starship captain was frightened of the sultry anguish. Going back to that word sultry and how it can mean humid, for some reason my brain's latched onto the idea of a humid anguish. I know that's ridiculous, but actually, anguish can lead to tears in a hot environment. That could get humid. And yeah, I think there's something to do with the coldness of space, and how this captain has just become completely used to space being freezing cold. Why wouldn't he be frightened of a humid atmosphere? Certainly if there's anguish involved. And the fact that this is a starship captain gives us free rein to go quite wild with this, because, hey, it's out in space, we can start making up aliens and things like that. And there might well be very strange beings like anguish itself, a floating blob of anguish. It could happen. It might even be humid in there if you get caught up in it, which could be frightening, let's face it. And hey, this starship captain gets around everywhere because he is ubiquitous. Right. Okay, well, it makes more sense than the last one, even if that's not an awful lot. But yeah, I have sort of explored these sorts of things before. Not it's not space aliens, all that kind of thing. Don't tend to go into space in my stories, but the idea of feelings being, or thoughts being outside of the body and becoming, or outside of the mind and actually being actual things, that's a fascinating idea. And yeah, as I say, if we're talking about aliens, you kind of had that free reign to just make something up that is utterly unearthly, because hey, it's we're not on Earth anymore when we're doing that. This has some possibilities. Yeah. No one likes anguish, but if you actually came across a creature that was anguish and was in fact humid, if you passed through it, it's like a ghost. It is very much like a ghost. Then that would be frightening. Okay. Interesting. I think it's time for a third and final Exquisite Corpse. See if this makes any more sense than the previous ones. This is from Joseph Clark. Interstellar. Oh my goodness. It seems we have a space theme today. Unexpectedly. Right, well, these things can happen. This noun is from Michael Clayton. Nightjar. So this is a bird, and yes, I did look it up and jot a little note on here. So it's nocturnal, grey-brown, has large eyes and eats insects. But this one is interstellar, so who knows? Right, let's go for an action. This is from Tammy Nevert. Okay. Cleaned the factory with. Gosh, that is very specific. Let us see. Of course, cleaned the factory with, let's just think about that for a second. We're either talking about an actual means of cleaning something, like a cleaning fluid or a type of mop, or a person or creature with whom you decide to do some cleaning. On that note, let's see. This is from someone who's called themselves Walk on Poo. Sorry, but it's poo with an H on the end, so it's kind of like Winnie the Pooh, but it's still, this is inexplicable to me. But the word is needless. That's an interesting describing word. Needless, so unnecessary in some way. Perhaps superfluous or just a bit excessive. Right, this is from Joseph Clark again. Astronaut. Oh wow, that's a bit strange. Gosh, there's a lot going on in space today. Where did that come from? So, the entire Exquisite Corpse is the interstellar nightjar, which is a bird, cleaned the factory with the needless astronaut. I don't know about you, but I feel like I really want to know what is produced by this factory. That feels like a central mystery to me. And it's very interesting. So the interstellar nightjar, this bird can go anywhere. It's interstellar. A little bit like the ubiquitous space captain, really, but it's a bird. It's a beautiful bird that can fly through space, go anywhere it likes, but it's cleaning a factory, and I think the astronaut's trying to help it, but the astronaut is unnecessary. Now why, okay, so just trying to crack this nut open. Why is the astronaut not necessary to this? Why would the astronaut suspect that she's going to be helpful, but she's not, and the bird is quite happy to clean the factory on her own? This has got to be a clue somehow to what is made in this factory and why it needs cleaning. Is it just a normal clean, or is there something else? Something's happened in this factory. There's been an explosion. How do I know this? I don't. I'm just making it up. For some reason, I'm feeling tempted to think of this as a factory of something like puddings, because that would make a lot of mess and would need cleaning up, and it just appeals to my sense of humour. But that wouldn't be too interesting as a story. There's got to be, some real conflict here that we need to care about. And hey, it's in space, so we can think big. It's about big concepts, isn't it, in science fiction? What else might you make in a special factory that has to be in space, perhaps for reasons of secrecy? It could be very specialist technology, a time machine. Why not? There's a factory for time machines. They're churning them out now, in space. There's an explosion, and we have an interstellar nightjar who is the janitor, perhaps also, I don't know, it could just be an engineer who's involved in this, who has also the ability to, or the duty to do specialist cleaning when there are explosions in time. What happens when you have an explosion in a time machine factory? This is just too weird. But the astronaut who wants to help out, she's just getting in the way. She's just an annoying human. Ooh, maybe the nightjar is a robot. Maybe this is all, it's run by robots. Why not just throw in all of these science fiction elements into a factory in space, and guess what? It's the annoying human that gets in the way. It sounds about right. This is the future, people. We're just going to be an annoyance to interstellar nightjars, okay? Just deal with it. No wonder I was wanting it to be just for puddings or something nice and simple like that. We can handle stuff like that. Okay, well, this was a particularly bizarre gameplay session, but I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any feedback on the new format of the show, or maybe the types of updates you'd like to hear from me, because it's variable. I'm more open now that I don't need to spend a lot of time sort of doing any research or sort of really chewing over themes and things like that. I can be more open to simply giving you updates about things that are going on with me, like books I'm reading or stuff I've been up to, writing updates, or if the Exquisite Corpse gameplay has given you any story ideas that you'd like to share on the show, please get in touch with me at annatizard.com. Send me a comment on the Brainstorm page, or find me on Twitter at Anna Tizard. I love to hear from you. Oh, and don't forget to send me some words, please, on my play page, because as I say, the Socks of Destiny are starting to get a little bit bare, a little bit light, yeah, on the words. So, until next time, go forth and be inspired.